One. Nancy, you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Yep, you bet. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nancy McSharry Jensen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of The Swing Shift, and I am delighted to talk today with my business partner, Sarah Duenwald, and in particular with Lisa Hufford, the CEO of Simplicity and the author of the newly available Work Your Way. I'm going to talk a little bit about Lisa and the situation today. Sarah's going to talk a little bit about Lisa, and then we're all going to have a conversation about the best ways to get back to work your way. A few housekeeping items up front. If you're not already, please put yourself on mute. If you have a question during the top part of the conversation, please put it in the chat screen. We'll try to answer them as we go. And if not, we are going to do some Q&A at the end. So know that you'll have a chance to talk with Lisa, Sarah, and myself. So let's get to it. In the past 18 months, the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in almost 40% of workers reevaluating what they want in a profession, according to a LinkedIn survey. The biggest number, of course, is they want more flexibility in their work lives. And with over 5 million women who have stepped back from the workforce, along with the other 45% of women who have already taken breaks, that's a lot of people who want to get back to work. Consulting work is a great path here, although many people wonder how to get that going. We are here to talk about that today, to get you going in that direction. Simplicity Consulting CEO Lisa Hufford, as I mentioned up top, just published Work Your Way, Reinvent Yourself, Create the Life You Want, and Thrive as a Consultant. It's an actionable how-to guide with everything you need to get going as a consultant. She's joined by Sarah Duenwald, who heads up our operations and programs at the Swing Shift, and my co-author of Back to Business. We're going to talk about Lisa's new book. We're going to talk about what makes a great consultant, and we're going to talk about why it's a terrific path into business, as well as how to break in. Sarah, why don't you give folks a little information about Lisa?
Yes, absolutely. So a little bit more on Lisa's background. Lisa's mission is to help everyone thrive in this new world of work. She founded Simplicity Consulting in 2006 to provide enterprise marketing services that helps brands run their marketing programs and operations at speed and scale. Founding Simplicity was a result of a personal need. After the birth of her second son, Lisa wanted high impact work that leveraged her skills in a flexible way. And now she leads a company that helps talented experts do the work they love. Prior to Simplicity, the bulk of Lisa's background was in sales and OEM operations at R.R. Donnelley, Modus Media, and Microsoft. She's an expert on personal brand, consulting trends, and the future of work. And along with her most recent book, Work Your Way, she's previously authored the Personal Brand Playbook that offers 5 steps to create a clear, compelling personal brand, and Navigating the Talent Shift that shows hiring managers how they can easily build on-demand teams and get faster results. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Yep. And before we start, Lisa, Sarah, and I share a professional background. We are all former employees or vendor managers for Microsoft. Sarah, I'm going to brag a little bit about my co-founder and co-author here. She spent the last 15 years focused on revenue growth operations in the technology consulting industry. She managed a team of business development representatives, and she was a senior manager at a gaming technology consulting company. Sarah has spoken widely about her experiences and insights on entrepreneurship, women at work, and her own career story. She co-authored Back to Business with me, and we co-hosted HarperCollins' leadership e-course of the same name. And we're all doing this under the aegis of the Microsoft Alumni Network. So big shout out to Microsoft Alumni Network and HarperCollins for working with all of us. Just a little bit about me. I've established new and emerging businesses at International Data Corporation, at Microsoft. I served as an account director at Sterling Communications, and together with Sarah have been featured in an array of places, from the Huffington Post as a top 100 limit-breaking female founder, as well as US News and World Report, Forbes, Motherly, and Authority magazine. But that's enough about us. We're here to talk with Lisa. Lisa, thank you for joining us. Can you start by telling us, how did you get into this consulting game? Sarah mentioned that the impetus was when you had your second child. So can you talk a little bit about how you got into this?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. And, we've been talking about having this conversation for so long, so I could not be more thrilled to all the people that are joining us. We share a mission with your organization, the Swing Shift and Simplicity, around really empowering people, especially women. I know the programs you offer women transitioning back into work are phenomenal. And then we partner and we place people on projects. 75% of our community is women. So that's kind of a segue into how did I get into consulting? Because I was one of those women back 15 years ago. And, here, I can't believe it's been 15 years this month, actually, that I decided to leave my job as a director in the sales division, the OEM sales division, and launch into this thing called consulting that I had no idea what it really meant, but I was really in search of flexibility, of freedom, of working with Microsoft. That's where I worked for 7 years as a full-time employee. And what I realized pretty quickly was I had a lot of skills I didn't even know I had when I transitioned. And I kind of figured out, I talk about personal brand. What was my brand? I didn't know I had one, but I did. And so I kind of discovered that first year of navigating and starting to do projects that I loved, really kind of being that back-end operational doer for clients. I loved the flexibility. So I had 2 young boys at the time, so I could kind of juggle my schedule in a way that I couldn't as a traditional corporate employee. And I could really pick the clients that I loved and the projects I loved. And sometimes I'd have 1 project and sometimes I'd have 3, and some were short-term and some were long-term. And for me, I love the variety and diversity in a really different way than a traditional job. And by the way, I worked in corporate for 15 years, loved every minute of it. I mean, a lot of what I learned is I earned my credibility to be able to do consulting. And so it's through that credibility and expertise and experience, and of course, your network and the relationships you build along the way, that really kind of build in this different and kind of a different type of an alternative career path. And so that's how I kind of launched into consulting for myself. And then about a year into doing project-based work, I kept getting approached by mostly women, the same story, 2 young kids who were saying, hey, can I buy you coffee and ask, how are you doing this? And that's when I realized, I wasn't just kind of the odd person, the anomaly of seeking this elusive flexibility. There were other people like me. And I quickly became very passionate about sharing everything I learned, everything to do and everything not to do, because I kind of said I learned the hard way that first year. And then ultimately that's really the advice that I've given out to thousands of professionals over now 15 years was really the motivation for the book. And so I'm just so excited to be able now to share the book in a much broader way to hopefully help people realize the book promise really is that consulting is a viable career option and you have everything you need to make it happen.
So Lisa, so you started as an individual consultant. You were a 1-person show. At what point and so you're looking at this now from both sides, because you have, do I have this right? You have over 200 people working for you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so you have that unique perspective of breaking in as a consultant and then over time growing your business to this really compelling organization. When you, now I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, from a hiring perspective. And Sarah, I guess, I'm going to jump on your question here. When you, as a hiring manager, are looking for and searching for consultants, what's the number one thing that you want to see?
So for hiring managers?
Yeah.
Well, so that question is such an important question. When I first started consulting, that was the question I had, which is, why would a client hire me as a consultant, or why would they hire any consultant? So I set out to do my own listening tour. And I went out and I asked all my clients at the time, or anyone who would talk to me, this question. I'd say, what do you look for in a great consultant? And what do you look for in a great consulting company? Because it became clear to me about 18 months into doing my own projects that there was an opportunity in this landscape. While there's a lot of consulting and staffing companies, I didn't really see one that I felt connected to, that represented my values as far as trust, transparency, support, specifically around sales, marketing, communications, and project management professionals. So kind of staying back in my wheelhouse, it's what I knew really well. And I kept trying to find that company and I didn't find it. So I thought, what if I just build it? I wonder if there'd be like 30 of, I literally thought it'd be like 30 of us, right? So I didn't really think it would become as big, but I think we all know now the trends are clear. But back then in 2006, 7, 8, then the financial crisis hit, right? And kind of changed everything. And what I realized was there was this unique opportunity in the marketplace. So back to the question of what do clients want? You know, what's interesting is today they want the same thing, back to what I discovered then. And ultimately what the clients told me that became the core of what everything we base my company around simplicity is what I call the ABCs of what clients want. It's attitude, build trust, communication. So clients would ultimately say, what do I want in a great consultant? I want someone with a great attitude. I want that someone to show up with great energy, with a smile, with positivity. And they'd say things like, and I just want them to do what they say. I want them to follow through. I want them to be basically trustworthy. Can I give them my work and know that it's going to be done well and on time? And then the last one, communication. Can they communicate well verbally? Can they communicate well in writing, in email? Do they know how to write, you know, what they want at the top of the email, not these long emails where they had to search for things. So these are seemingly little things that make the big difference. And what shocked me kind of about that feedback when I really sat back and thought about it was, you know, I kind of thought clients would be like, oh, I want a specific expertise.
Yes.
They expect that. But what really sets the good and the great consultants apart is these kind of what you call soft skills. Soft skills are the differentiators. If you show up with a great attitude, if you can know how to build trust with your client every day, and you can be a really great communicator, those skills on top of your expertise make you that super desirable consultant that clients want to hire again and again and again. And so that was how we based everything at Simplicity. And we still do today. All the questions, the screening, how we bring in our talent, how we help people be successful when we're working with consultants. It really kind of comes back to these core fundamentals that really are the differentiator.
And I think that it's very telling right now. And you know, I love data, and something that I mentioned up front is almost 40% of currently employed workers are considering going out on their own. This is a LinkedIn study that just came out a couple of months ago. And I think that's as a direct result of the last 18 months, as well as license applications for self-employment and independent contractors are at an all-time high. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how consulting benefits individuals who are thinking about making this switch. In addition to having the ABCs, can you talk a little bit about how consulting benefits them as an option? Because I think many people are very comfortable with this notion of I'm a full-time employee of company X. And so this idea of switching to a looser arrangement is appealing for some and intimidating for others. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. You look, we are right now in the middle of probably the largest workforce transformation ever. And it's not over. No one knows how this is all going to shake up. But what we know for sure is what we're really seeing is the shift of power to talent. Talent is in charge. I mean, everyone's hiring right now. There are so many options for people out there, which is exciting. And to your point, can be really overwhelming. Yes. Because there is the traditional full-time employment path, which is great in many regards for many people. And there is this other path around consulting or whatever you want to call it. There's lots of titles, right? Contractor, freelancer, gig worker, temp, staff, whatever you want to call yourself. Really what it means is you're working on projects, you're working on a contract basis for a client externally versus internally. That's the big differentiator. So what I've seen over the years is talent has options. And I've seen people do everything from they shift from corporate to consultant. That's what I initially saw. Some people go back into corporate.
Right.
Some people go back and forth between the two. Some people leave corporate. They love taking their skills and being externally on the outside. There's pros and cons being internal at a company
right.
and being external. There's no perfect, but I think what's most important and what you're saying is if people have options, and how do you evaluate what's right for you whenever that time is right. So I'm a big proponent of what I tell people all the time when they come to me and say, I'm thinking about leaving my job. I'm thinking about consulting, Lisa. What should I know? Can I do it? I always say, number one is you have options. Of course you can do it. Now it's a matter if you want to do it. And again, go read the book. It'll tell you everything you want to know if you want to do it. But really what it comes down to are knowing yourself. It's a very personal decision. And you might find yourself in a life transition, like millions of women right now that are dealing with going, kids, are they going back to school? Or are we not going back to school? We think we are going back to school. Women that might want more flexible work. Well, anyone that wants more flexible work, but we hear a lot about, especially women being impacted right now. And I'm very personally passionate to get this information out to those women who might only see their career option as a traditional 40-hour in-office job. And that's just not the case anymore. They can create a part-time project if that works best for them. They can take their skill, whatever their skills are, and go pitch it to people they know and try to create work versus fitting in a traditional box that maybe isn't working for them right now. And so that allows you not only, create income for your family, which is really important right now, but it keeps you in the game, keeps your skills fresh. And at some point in the future, maybe you go back in and do a traditional job, or maybe not, but you don't have to know that right now. Some people I think, oh my God, if I take myself out, look, everything's possible. And if there's anything this pandemic has, I think, helped all of us, especially women, realize is no one should be questioning the gap on your resume, or if you've been out of work for a while, you can go back. I've helped so many women go back that have been out of the workforce 10, 15, 20 years. There are skills, there are roles, and most clients, what I see, are happy to have someone show up that's hungry and grateful to do great work. So if you're out there, if that's you, I really am really passionate about helping women realize they have more power, they have more confidence, then they might realize they have more ability to really create the work that they want. And really what you're looking for is you're just looking for someone to give you that chance and that opportunity. And that might take a few times. It might take several times to talk to different people to get that opportunity, but it's out there, and people are looking for really great people to work for them.
Great. So Lisa, just a follow-up question on that. So would you recommend, if someone's starting out consulting, that they really take stock of what they enjoy doing, what their skills are, and then really hone in on that work in particular? Or if there's an opportunity that's maybe adjacent to that as like a stepping stone to also take that on? Is that just a personal preference, or do you recommend going, a different way?
Such a great question. So this is such a personal question wherever you are. So I always say, first, start with your personal brand. And if you go to my website, you can download a free consultant starter kit, which essentially is the workbook that will walk you through what is my personal brand, which essentially is your strengths and your passions, and just kind of getting clear on things you probably know about yourself, but maybe haven't checked in, of what it is that you really love and how you want to show up. What are your greatest strengths? What are your professional success stories? If you've been a project manager, even if you've done volunteer work, there are transferable skills that people will pay you for, right? So how do you kind of take those skills and then think about what you want to do? So it kind of depends on where you are, Sarah. I think if you know the kind of work you want to go after, and you have a network of people at companies that you're like, oh yeah, they hire for that kind of work, like social media manager or project manager or communications, and you kind of know how to position yourself and how to go kind of talk to people, I would say be targeted. If you're new to this game and you need some support, I think this is where like your programs are great, or this is what we do a lot even at Simplicity, of people like, hey, how does this consulting stuff work? So we can really get into it. We have a whole talent team. Talent managers are talking to our consultants all day long, like, this is what an opportunity looks like. here's the pay, here's the work, here's how it's going to be. And then you kind of go, oh, you can assess it for yourself. Is that where I am right now? Because a lot of people just don't really know, like, well, what does that mean? What kind of work is it? So I think it depends on where you are. And if an opportunity lands in your lap, I think that's a great that's a great moment to just ask yourself, is this something I'm excited about? Are these skills I want to develop? Are these people I want to work with? We all know it's the people we work with that really can kind of make or break our projects, and building that reputation in your own portfolio, really thinking about a portfolio career, your clients and the ideal client. There's a whole section in my book on what is your ideal client, and really defining that for you before you go out and talk to people, so that you minimize any challenges from the beginning. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways when you think about projects, depending on where you are, whether you need more information or you kind of know what you need to do. It's a matter of packaging yourself and getting out there.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say, we might talk about this, Nancy, so stop me, but that goes along with, we talk about our paths back to business often. And I think those decisions are, like you said, a personal decision, but two of the paths back that we talk about are the try and buy path and the lily pad approach. And sometimes what that is maybe it's taking an opportunity that isn't your dream project, but it's in an organization that you love. It's at a company that you admire. It's working with a manager that you enjoy, so maybe there's some compromise there a little bit, knowing that the next step, you have the opportunity to network within that team for a potential different opportunity, right? So it's really analyzing the longer term impact as well as just that shorter term also thing.
That's a great point. And I'll share a story, because I think stories are always so powerful. A long time ago, we had someone that came to us as Simplicity, and we do a lot of work with Microsoft along with big companies across all divisions at Microsoft, from the partner channel enterprise all the way to consumer, Minecraft, Xbox group. And this specific person was so passionate about gaming. Like, he wanted to get the Xbox group, but he didn't have any gaming background, but he had project management. And so we were able to partner with him, help him find a contract in the Xbox team, leveraging his PM skills. So we did that for a few years, worked with us, and ultimately he ended up converting because his passion was to be on the Xbox team internally. That's not all the case. Most consultants don't want to go in-house. They've done that. For him, that was what you're saying, and that was a path in that it would have been really hard for him to try to go direct without any Xbox experience, right? So that's an example of thinking about sometimes getting in on a contract role. Then you can kind of also assess from the outside on the inside, is it what you thought? Is it the work you really want to do? Because sometimes you don't really know until you're in there what you want to do. And oftentimes we have people that might think they want to go on the inside, then they go into consult and they say, this is great. I can manage my life better. I have the flexibility, as well as I'm just doing the work I love. We hear this often from consultants that really are passionate about whatever their work is, whether it's writing or managing projects or launching campaigns or building sales channels, strategic work, whatever it is. They're like, I just get to do that. And to me, that's fun. And I don't have to worry about all the bureaucracy and the politics sometimes that can go along with a traditional full-time employment job. So it's back to kind of knowing yourself and what is it that really motivates you and kind of lights you up right now.
Yeah. I think it's funny because what Sarah had touched upon, we recommend at the Swing Shift and in Back to Business, we're saying, go talk to companies like Simplicity, because one of the things that you touched on is this notion of making new contacts. And when we were getting ready for this call, we talked a little bit about networking and word of mouth. And Lisa, I'm wondering if you're going to touch on that. And then we've got a question about your first 30 days. So let's talk first about how you see networking and that whole word of mouth and using that to move yourself in and along.
Yeah, it really is all about your network. I mean, this has been my experience for my whole life working. Mm-hmm. It's all about giving, and I say a lot, like give with no expectation. I don't expect anything. I'm not looking for someone to do something for me. I'm looking for where I can add value. And if I can make connections for people, or I can help them be successful, or I can sit down and do a brainstorm strategy session with them, whatever it is that they're needing where I feel like I can add value, like, to me, that's super inspiring and motivating. And I feel like good work. And ultimately, like, knowing when people can see that, it'll come back to you. And by the way, that's a really great strategy if you're looking for project work. It's to kind of offer a free working session. We call them working sessions at Simplicity, or strategy session. So your client can see how you think and just go into it. Say, what's your problem? What are you trying to solve? Get on the whiteboard with them, give them your thinking. Very few people take this advice when I give it, but I can tell you when they do, it absolutely stands out. It makes such a difference if you're willing to sit there and really give an hour or two of your time to really create an opportunity and a project for a client and show them how you think. I think that's so key when you're thinking about how do you approach. That's one of the tactics. There's the whole chapter on how to land a project in my book. Yeah. We're kind of talking about the element of really thinking about your network. And also the other tip I'll give you guys is, go and create that list of people you love working with. And it's probably not going to be very long, and that's okay. Because when you think about the people that you've loved working with in the past, think about, maybe if those people are available now that you could work with again, or if they're not, but why did you love working with them? What elements about your relationship that you want to look for in your ideal client next?
Oh, I think that's really great guidance. People forget that.
Yeah.
They forget that, you spend all this time with these other people. Sarah, did you have something you wanted to jump in with?
I was just going to say, just reminding everyone too, to ask what problems they have. Go to those people that you've admired working for and have a conversation with them. And this can just be a touch-based conversation, but ask, like, what issues are you having right now? What problems are your teams facing? Maybe I can help. Right? Like, this is where I focus my skill set, and they probably already know that if you've enjoyed working with them. But it's really going that step and asking, like, is there a problem that I can help solve for you right now? Yeah. And that's just making sure you're turning it back on them.
Yeah, we have a question from the chat, and I think this is a good time to talk about this. So more tactically, when you get a contract, Lisa, Sarah Tatus is asking, what's your advice about the first 30 days on a consulting contract, right? How can a consultant make a great impression and then navigate this new consulting setup?
Yes. Oh, such a great question. So your first 30 days are critical, because how you start is how you finish. And when you think about the most important thing you can do at the very beginning of even before day one, is set clear expectations about everything, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I learned this one the hard way early on. Even those little things that you don't think will become issues, you don't want to have anything become a potential issue or misunderstanding 3 months down the road, because that's your reputation, that's your credibility. Mm-hmm. So it's on you. This is what we teach our consultants. It's on you as the consultant to manage the client effectively. And we support, this is what our team does with our consultants, we support them. But if you're out there on your own, really, I would say really take time to ensure you are setting up clear expectations for everything from how are we going to work together? Are we going to have video calls? Are we meeting in person? How often is that happening? Do I send a status report? Do I need to provide a template for that? Do you have a template for that? What are the shares I need to have access to? Who are the people I should be working with? Who should not I be working with? Do I take work from your team? Do I not take work from your team? Do I have a hard schedule? Am I working 9 to 3, 9 to 5? If I'm not online, do you want to know about it? Do you not want to know about it? Do you want me to text you? Do you want me to call you? So literally, right? I'm going down into the weeds, but these are the little things. If you don't have a conversation about up front with your client and you just start a project and you're going to start working the way you've worked, and that may work for them, but they might have a whole different way that they want to work. And part of being an exceptional consultant is adapting to your client needs. Every client is different and how they might want to work with you. And your job as a consultant is to make your client look great, is to make them shine, to make them the rock star. Because when they are the rock star, guess what? You can also be part of that success because you're helping lift them up, right? So you need to know how they want to work. And then you need to adapt to that. And part of that is, if they don't know, then you provide suggestions. Hey, here's how I want to work. I want to work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 5. We're going to have a call every Friday at 10. I'm going to send you this dashboard every Friday. Does this work for you? So if you want to, kind of provide that proactive guidance, I definitely suggest consultants, if you have a way you already like to work, propose that and get that approval. And if the client has other ideas, of course, they're going to come back, and then you're going to have a conversation. But these are all things you should work out way ahead of time. And then that first day, that first week is critical to make sure that you're back in alignment. So one thing that happens, and I'm kind of getting ahead, but this is also most common question, is sometimes you kind of get out of alignment with your client down the road because maybe there hasn't been clear expectations set, or consultants, what happens all the time, they get too much work. Now we're out of scope with what you said you were going to do, right? How do you pull that back? This is how you pull it back, because in the beginning, when you have that really clear statement of work, and here's the deliverables, and here's how I'm going to invoice, and here's what we agree on, right? Then you can go back to that and say, hey, I'm finding that I'm being asked by someone else on the team to do this work. I'm finding that my scope is expanding, and that's okay. But can we have a conversation? Do you want me to do this work? So if you do, let's rescope the work. And oftentimes when you proactively, I've seen this when consultants go to clients and say this, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize we're going out of scope. I didn't know that. And either they're going to say, no, don't do that work, that's not important, or they're going to expand and you're going to get paid for the work you do. So this is critical. Do not let that go where you're doing work that you're not getting paid for, because I've seen it happen so many times where we know what happens is you become resentful over time because you think your client knows, and oftentimes they may not know that, that you're taking on all this other work and being uncompensated. And you can't go backwards. You can't ask to get paid when it's 3 months later, and now you're just mad and you're angry. And you never want to be in that position, because if your client's like, why didn't you tell me, right? So it's on you to make sure that managing expectations, clear expectations up front, and then ensure you're the one actively just asking the questions and checking it.
Yep. And it sounds like a periodic check-in and using a statement of work. And I think you talk about it in the book, and I'm guessing there are examples up on your consulting how-to page. Those are great ways to just keep yourself on track as well as your client, right? Because you're right. All of, getting everybody's expectations and then keeping them in line is really critical to everybody's success. I have a couple more questions, and then I think we can open it up. So we talked a little bit about, you mentioned about talking to past managers and peers about breaking in to consulting. Do you have a good way? Is there a single way that you think of where you say, what's the best way to position yourself as you consider this path? I know when we talked before this, you talked about maybe thinking about a boutique company for each discipline. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of options out there if you're thinking about consulting. So you can certainly go it on your own. You can have your own company, your own brand. And, the good news is you're in charge, and the bad news is you're in charge, because everything falls. I say that in the book jokingly, but I remember someone told me that when I was starting my company. I'm like, oh, I get it. Because you get to make all the decisions, but then you also have the weight of all the decisions, not only the selling, the delivery, but all the back office and the taxes and all the operational, right? So if you go at your own, that really is, that is one unique path by yourself. You can also, as you mentioned, work through these boutique consulting. There's many different sizes, small, large, different kinds of consulting firms, agencies, consulting companies, staffing companies. I feel like there's so many terms now. This whole industry has it's kind of merging in a weird way. And so there's a place for everybody. So if you have a specific discipline, finance, HR, marketing, IT, there are specialized organizations around your discipline. And if you don't know of any, Google, ask around people in your industry. If you're an accounting professional, there are just groups that just place accountants. And then it's a matter of finding values and matching of that kind of alignment. I think I'm really a big believer in this, because it's so important to be with a company that you share values with, I think, so that you're always in alignment on projects and your rates and how you're treated and what the expectation is of you. Some firms make consultants find work for them, some don't. What is it? What's important to you about your relationship and your interaction with what I call your intermediary? If you're going to work through an agency, whether you bring them work or they're finding you work, what's really important to you? What's your expectation? And then find that match, right? Find that match for whatever your discipline is. And then there's also some just broad, big staffing companies that kind of do everything. And so if you're someone that doesn't want really a relational approach, maybe being part of a larger, more transactional organization suits you, right? So this is back to knowing your skills, but just know everything's out there, but it does kind of start with where you are. If you need more support, if you want to be around peers that are in your discipline, probably a boutique, a firm in your regional area, it might be the best to support you with that has really great leadership and networking ability and best practice sharing. There's lots of great organizations within the specific disciplines.
And I think, and I was just looking through the participant list, and I know there's a couple people in there who've got a really rich background in a couple of areas that are maybe thinking about switching into a new area and that boutique idea is perfect for those folks, because it's an old Microsoft saw. For some of you who may recall this, it lets you embrace and then extend your skill sets. I don't know if you coined that, Lisa, but
I like it. I'll take it. I'm going to steal that from you. Embrace it. I like it.
Yeah, embrace what you have and extend it out there. Sarah, did you have any more questions before we went to an open?
Not really. I would just echo kind of what Lisa said about the consulting company and the support that they do provide. It's everywhere from helping you get those projects to helping you understand the negotiation part of it. How do you talk to these managers in different companies? The procurement process is different for every company, who you work with. It can be overwhelming. And I think it's something to think about. Many people think when they become a consultant that they're like this lone wolf and they have to figure it all out on their own. And that's not the case. And that's not to say that maybe at some point you wouldn't like to do that. But, there's a lot of, small businesses, it's easier to contract with them as an individual consultant. These large companies, sometimes the only way to get the foot in the door is to use these consulting firms like Simplicity. And I've worked for one in the past, and I just will say everything that Lisa said. They're all very, very different in understanding who's in charge. Yes, the values that they exude, what their reputation is to internal hiring managers is important as well. How do they deliver those services? Because all of that will affect you, even if you have nothing to do with any of that, maybe past history, whatever that is. You can ask those questions. It's important.
Right. And that, and it's that brand extension too. You want to make sure that an organization that you work for accurately reflects your own brand. I've done some consulting as well. I was a consultant with Sterling, loved it. And partially because I really shared their values, and I loved how they delivered. It was very consistent with what Lisa said. Okay. We are happy to take questions from our participants. Does anybody have something in particular that they would like to ask Lisa about from our community? And you can either put it in the chat or unmute.
Yeah, and while people are thinking about that, I was just thinking about there may be some common questions. I'm trying to think of some common questions for us, that I know for when you guys teach people how to get back in through,
right,
through the swing shift. And we have people coming to us, and, it's a really good point about where you are and kind of what you need. And so I think I'm thinking about how to address this on all levels. There's people that are brand new that are, what is this thing called consulting, that aren't even aware this really exists, right? And then there's people who have kind of heard about it and they kind of get it, and they're thinking, well, how do my skills translate? How do I package myself up? How do I take all the skills I have and position myself for project work, right? And then there's those people who've been consulting maybe for years, whether it's on their own or jumped around through different, vendor companies. and they don't even, and they don't really, but they haven't really thought about kind of brand and relationship and that power better together. So wherever you are, if there's any questions around any kind of one of those three, I would say there's kind of three main categories of questions that I see that we get at Simplicity. We could go in any which way of those. But I will add on to what you were talking about, community. This is a change, I've seen dramatically in especially the last 10 years, I'd say, where when I first started my company, people really didn't value, I would say, the company that they're working with. If you were like a Microsoft approved supplier, there's thousands of them. And if you were someone that could find your own work, it was very transactional. But, in the last, I'd say 10 years, especially, there has been a movement to really those successful consultants recognizing their brand and associating it with the company brand. So I think you both just said this, and it's such an important point to amplify, is when you come into consulting, you have your brand, which is amazing, but when you can partner with a company that is in your area of expertise and has a great reputation and values alignment, that only is going to up level you. Now you're part of a broader community. And for many consultants, the one thing they worry about or they fear is, how am I going to continue to have work? And so this is something we think about all the time. Yeah, project-based work lends itself to project-based. And it's not a guarantee when projects end, you're going to have something else. But there is a whole bunch of activities you can do and a network to cultivate while you're on project. So these are things like that we do at Simplicity to really make sure that we're helping consultants all along, supporting them before their project ends, so that if they want to continue on with another project, right, that it's continuous and there's opportunities. So when you think about that community, putting yourself in a place of power, of being seen and visible with a company that has opportunities that align with where you are with your skills, it's just going to help you kind of maintain project flow, project pipeline, if that's something that's really on your mind.
And in your book here, and now this is the time where I'm going to help shill the book. This is Lisa's book. I am digging it. I love, there's a fact. Yeah, and it starts, if you have the book already, it's the Appendix 1. And if you are looking for that first step in, these questions are it's about a dozen, and it really runs the range of, well, I think this is too risky. How do I measure the pros and cons, to what if I can't find a contract, to how do I get in alignment with my team? It's a great jump. The book itself, it's fantastic. And I think that that appendix, funnily enough, is a great way to start. We do have a question in from the chat. Susan Rowe asks, as someone who's switched jobs a number of times and has been in really different roles in different organizations, she's hesitant to brand herself as an expert in any one area. And so she's wondering, do you see a market for consultants who are more generalists and brand themselves as that? How do you talk about that?
That's a great question. We get that one a lot. So we work with a lot of consultants who have had these broad experiences, traditionally a corporate experience, that have blended themselves to generalists. And they kind of learned it all. And so they come in with, I've done it all. Now, how do I take all this and be a consultant? Part of the personal brand work, I would encourage this person to really go through personal brand to identify right now, maybe just for the next couple of years, what is it about everything you've learned that you most love right now? If you had to choose one element, one aspect of all the work you've done that you kind of want to hang your hat on, say, I really want to do more of this. So for example, we work with a lot of marketing professionals. They come in, they've done everything. They've launched products, they've done project management, they've done writing, communications, and they've done strategy work, they've done execution work, right? And they're like, I love it, I can do it all. And we say, great, sometimes those projects come up, but often in order to really stand out in a pretty crowded marketplace, our clients are really looking for expertise. Doesn't mean to say you can't talk about everything you've done. In fact, they love that you have that diversity and broad experience. But right now, when you're a consultant, what clients really want to know is, what do you love? What are you going to come do for me right now? So this is where it comes back to you as the consultant to really say, gosh, what am I most passionate about right now? And it doesn't have to be forever. You can change, but for this project, what do I want to do? And so this is where like if you're working with Simplicity and one of our talent managers, they would partner with you and they would understand. And you might have a couple areas that you're like, you know what, I really love project management, but I also love writing. And you might find a project that blends both, or you might be considered distinctly for one or the other. We really encourage people to get clear. It doesn't mean that you have to totally pigeonhole yourself, and it's going to feel really uncomfortable to just put yourself standing for something, because you want to say everything to everyone about everything you've done, but know when you do that, they don't know how to think about you. And that's how most people approach work, is they just kind of say everything, and then clients, you know, have like a 2-second attention span and they're off to the next thing, and they're looking for that consultant who is very specific and targeted and expert at what they do, and that's what they're looking for. So don't be afraid to really experiment with branding yourself and getting really narrow. You play around with your LinkedIn title. I do that a lot, and just, it's going to evolve. It's going to evolve, but it doesn't hurt you to actually be more narrow than what's going to feel comfortable to you. Just know that's part of the process.
And I think it's important to keep in mind that when you do have these broad range of skills, you've still got those things. You're not necessarily using them right now, and you may bring them to the fore in the future. But I think you're absolutely right. There's another side to this that Joe is asking, and she wants to know, how do you talk about your success as a consultant if you've done work in the context of full-time employment, or otherwise, you know, in a role where the organization you worked with might not see you as a consultant? I know you've run into this, Lisa. What's your perspective on this?
Well, I mean, this is how I got started, right? And this is what I teach. I've taught thousands of people who have come from corporate and say, I got all this experience as an employee. How does it translate to being a consultant? So it's really kind of that same process of personal brand, really spending that time. And I have my free personal brand playbook. You can get on my site or simplicityci.com. It's 5 questions. It's very simple, but they're very powerful around uncovering your strengths, your passion. What are your professional success stories? That's a really important question. When have you felt like you've been on top of the world? What was that work you were doing? When you go through that exercise, no matter if you've been a W-2 employer, consultant, whatever the work, even if it was 10 years ago you did that work, you have professional success stories. So then identifying those key elements of what it was that you were doing gives you a clue as to what you probably want to do more of. So now you can take that, and then this is where you can work with, you know, someone, like if you're working with us, Simplicity, we partner with you on helping you see how that could translate to specific projects. You could also do this on your own though, and seek out people doing the work you think you want to do. Maybe you're like, I think I want to go be a project manager, but I'm not really sure what that means. So who do you know that's doing project management work? Who can you take to coffee? Most people are happy to talk about what they do. They love talking about themselves, the work they do. Then you can just listen and take notes, talk to a few of those people, and you're going to know immediately if, okay, that is what I want to do. That's the kind of work. And now you're going to know how to position yourself. And through that exercise, you're going to navigate yourself to the work. Or you're going to say, oh my God, I don't want to do anything like that. That is not what I thought it was going to be. And now before you actually jumped into a project and found that out, you can pivot, right? And do something else.
And also with what Joe was saying, so talking more about the work versus the consultant piece of it. Right. So this is not what I did as a consultant. This is the work that I've done, the work that you need done. Regardless of what the situation was that I was in, I've done this work before almost. So positioning it about more of the work. Interesting.
Sarah, I'm so glad you brought that up. This is such a critical point. Talk about the results of the work, regardless of how you got paid to do that work, whether it was an employee or a consultant. That's actually irrelevant. It's the results. So one of the biggest things we see with clients and how we screen in talent every day is they want to know the results that you delivered. So the more specific you can be, and sometimes if you're on big teams, it's hard to say like, this is exactly what I delivered, but the more you can narrow in on your outcomes that you contributed to the work that you did, then you can translate that to how you can deliver that for future clients. So that is so important to talk about the work and the results you deliver. And it could be something as simple as, you know, I came in and the client, we hear this a lot, like project managers come in, it's chaos, and they need to organize it. They need to get a workflow, they need to organize, they need to herd the cats, they need to keep things on projects. And ultimately the project was on time, and delivered this result. If you can deliver financial impact, that's even better. Sometimes that's really hard to do, but if you can deliver a monetary value, or if you saved a company money, hey, by implementing this process, we saved the company $100,000. That right there is your lead, because every client would want to hear how you either grew sales or you saved money, right? So if you can actually show that kind of a result in the work that you've done and quantify it that way, that's like gold. And you should put that on your LinkedIn profile, and that should be your talking points for sure as you're interviewing and talking with potential clients.
I think that's really important. We, we talk about this at the Swing Shift and in Back to Business, making sure you quantify your results. Shireen said, where you talk about creating efficiencies, and it's, everybody know the buzzwords and you know what the important quantifiers are in every discipline and in every industry. Make sure to attach numbers to those things. I know it's hard to believe we have been at this for almost an hour. We want to thank all of you for taking time to talk with us today. Again, I'm here to tell you, please take a look at Work Your Way. You can get the consulting playbook at lisahufford.com. If you want to know more about the Swing Shift and the programs and services we offer, please check us out at theswingshift.co. And of course, we have our book and e-learning course, Back to Business. We'll walk you through everything from initial ideas about what direction you're going to want to go, all the way out to how do you negotiate and land that dream job, whether it's full-time, contract, or consulting. Lisa, and so is it lisahufford.com where we want to get more information about the book and the download?
Yes, absolutely. The Free Consultant Starter Kit is, I think it's a super valuable resource. I hope if you're thinking about consulting download, I think it'll really help you kind of launch and work through a lot of these things we've been talking about. I took a look at it. It's super useful. Good. That's the point. Hopefully it's practical and useful. I'm all about like, is it useful? Can I make it actionable? Yep. Awesome. Let's do it. Okay. Thank you all again. I'm going to hold up the book one more time. I really appreciate all of your time in dialing in today. Lisa, Sarah, and then in the background, Madeline and Sarah, who made sure that the logistics of this all came together. I really appreciate your time and attention, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
I'll sit here and hold.